Your t-shirts are too tight, Billy.
T-shirts are too tight too, Billy!
Luger. One thing that I've noticed the most, because I tried to do a little research on Revenge of the Nerds, and the one thing I noticed the most is that there's a bunch of that whenever you go to watch their review of the movie, they're like prefacing the whole thing with, just know that this movie has lots of issues.
It hasn't aged very well.
Yeah.
I get a lot of that too. What a bunch of the alpha betas would cram their underwear up their for saying this hadn't aged well.
He's Blake. I'm Ronnie. All the good names were taken podcast. And Blake, today we're going to talk 1984's Revenge of the Nerds. Obviously, one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think you like it too, because I made you watch it. One thing just stuck with me, because I was hoping to get like a lot of people. They're like, man, this movie's great. It makes me feel good about who I am and fighting for my individuality. And all it is, Skolnick should go to jail.
No, he shouldn't. You know what happens when you do what Skolnick does? You get the girl. Yeah, Ronnie, this movie is, I think I said this to you not too long ago. It's the greatest underdog movie that doesn't involve sports. I mean, 99% of underdog movies, it's football, it's boxing, it's karate, it's something. This is just like underdogs as a human. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's nerds versus jocks, and so well done. It is one. It's definitely in the top 5. It's one of the best movies of all time.
I think so too. I think without a doubt, it's the best R-rated. We always have, when we did the audio podcast, we had this same question. Do we call it? It's a teen comedy, right? I mean, those guys are teens. Yeah, those guys are teens. It's the best R-rated teen comedy, the best teen comedy ever made. And not only for the gags and the cursing and the raunchy stuff, but also for the message that is built and builds throughout the movie with multiple characters. This movie's great. This is another one of those that when I'd go to the video rental store, I would always grab it if it was there.
I was thinking Revenge of the Nerds, when you said it was a teen comedy, I'm like, well, what are some other like raunchy teen comedies that came out around the same time? And I thought, well, Porky's, it's one of our favorites. It's a classic. I was thinking Back to School, but I was like, Back to School really don't have any heart, like this movie does.
It tries to.
Well, okay, so it tries to, but it fails, in my opinion. Yes, like this one really has heart there at the end. But it just got me thinking, like, I guess Porky's is considered a huge success compared to this. And do you think people at the time thought this was a Porky's ripoff? Because I feel like this movie was based around that panty raid scene,
You're not going to believe me when I tell you this. I've never compared Porky's and Revenge of the Nerds. I've never even thought to think that one was ripping off the other, because it feels like they're completely different movies. You're right. And I never knew until you mentioned box office that Porky's made $105 million at the box office compared to $40 million for Revenge of the Nerds. So if you'd have asked me which movie had the bigger box office, I would have said Revenge of the Nerds, because it feels like it's a bigger cultural phenomena. I mean, is that the right word? Or would you say Porky's is bigger?
I think Porky's is bigger because it happened first.
And now I know why they made 3 Porky's movies, because the first one made over $100 million. So you come back and you make as many of those as you can. Here's the deal with Revenge of the Nerds is I think what makes it so special is the balance of everything inside the movie, from goofy comedy to raunch to actual heart. I think it manages to even out all of those throughout the entirety of the movie. And that's really what works the most for me. I mean, when I think of Revenge of the Nerds, I've got a handful of scenes, and we're going to talk about it when we Good, Bad, and Ugly this. But there's a handful of scenes that stick out that immediately pop to my mind when I hear anything to do with Revenge of the Nerds. You ready to start it?
Let's rock and roll.
Okay, Blake, lead us off. What is some of your goods?
First
good.
one, and I don't know the right terminology here, but I'm going to say the soundtrack, the music, literally every tune that is played in this movie, I love. From the opening song of "Go ahead, put us down. One of these days we'll turn it around." You got the cleaning montage. You gotta put one foot in front of the other. Thriller, obviously, by Michael Jackson. I mean, you want to hear something sad? My first introduction to Thriller was Revenge of the Nerds. I had never heard the song before until they're in that Lambda house partying down with the Moose. The music or the sound bite at the end when the Tri-Lambs show up to save the day, the brother Tri-Lambs, the fraternity brothers show up. I love that. And then it closes out with "We Are the Champions." Even that damn Chinese song when Takashi's riding the tricycle drinking beer.
Number 2.
Effing great. I'm serious when I say like the party music that the Alpha Betas when they're drinking at like 9 a.m. In their frat house. Are you ready? Are you ready? And then the house is on fire. Not the house is on fire. Burning down the house.
The house is burning down.
And then you got the musical showdown at the end. The tune that the Nerds put together, that's iconic in my little bubble world. I have friends that I work with and that I hang out with that, Takashi beating on his gong. I mean, they still say that,
The boys in the moves are clapping along.
Exactly. So my first good is, I don't want to say the soundtrack. I don't, because I think there's a better way to say this. But the sounds of this movie is fantastic.
Every major song piece in this movie is accompanied by a great scene. From the very beginning of it, when they're driving to the college and you get the Revenge of the Nerds song it's so cheesy, but it's good, to the introduction of the Alpha Betas, to the scene at the end where they kick off the carnival, to the dance, the party scene where they're trying to impress you in. Everything is tied to a musical number, so it's so easy to remember.
And I'll go one further. I'll say that Poindexter adds a really good soundbite to a scene with his violin playing. It's when they're living in the gym and Lewis and Gilbert come back from getting pranked by the Alpha Betas and they're covered in, feathers or whatever. The music that he's playing is so depressing and it fits perfectly because Lewis and Gilbert just got, who knows what happened to them. But and B, everybody in that gym is depressed because they're living in a gymnasium. So the music that he's playing on his violin just fits perfect.
My first good is the setting. Adams College, home of the Adams. I think they used the University of Arizona. I'm not entirely sure that's correct, but I think the filming happened there. And me and you were watching this the other day, and you were like, Lewis or Gilbert don't have a car? And I said, they don't need a car. This is one of those campuses that has everything you need. It's like a built-in city. There's never a need to leave campus, and with the exception of going to the police department that I'm not entirely sure might not be on campus, if that's like the security office or whatever, none of these characters leave campus. Even the house that they supposedly find is located on the campus, Blake. The whole campus is a character in itself. I love the Alpha Betas fraternity house We get to see the Pies, their sorority house. The nerds or the leftovers in this movie are staying in the basketball gym, and the freshman dorm that they originally are living in, we don't get to see much of that even after the Alpha Betas take over. You don't see a lot of what goes in there. The football field, everything, and especially when you get to the Tri-Lamb's house, every bit of the campus seems like extremely unique and adds to the movie, I think. So I love the setting of this movie. Even at the end when they're doing the what's it called?
Like a pep rally?
Not the pet rally, the carnival that they win. What do they call that? The homecoming carnival, the something like that. Even the homecoming carnival is unique in the fact that they're using the entirety of the campus with races and things like that. And like you just added, the pet rally at the end. You don't know what part of campus that is. It's great too. So definitely one of the best things about this movie is the setting pieces.
That scene where the dad's driving Lewis and Gilbert to college, that's the only time we get one of our characters in or around a car, right?
Well, you got Stan on his motorcycle in that one scene.
Stan's on his motorcycle and the coach is riding a golf cart. But other than that, there's no driving with these college kids at all, right?
Yeah. What do you think about John Goodman in this movie?
I think he is perfect.
Dean, we got a big game coming up, and I don't want my boys' minds worried about where they're going to live.
Well, they should have thought of that before they burned their house down.
I think he's perfect because he is your classic bully. And at the end, when Dean stands up to him, he's about to knock him out in front of everyone. I would like to point that out. Little things I notice now that I didn't notice as a kid, like the entire campus is there, and the dean is about to get knocked out by the football coach. When he sees that someone bigger is there, he cowers down, and I love that. I love that message. That it was a classic message in the '80s that bullies are scared of people that are bigger than them. They're cowards.
They build to that through the whole movie. It's sort of what I was alluding to earlier. Is you meet the dean, and he's a really good character. He is attached to John Goodman for some reason in almost every scene of this movie. And John Goodman's treating him like crap, telling him what to do, yelling over him when he's trying to make a point, to the part at the very end of it when he's trying to protect Gilbert from getting beat up by the head football coach, by the way. And he actually stands up to his bully that he works with right there. And you're absolutely right. The fact that Goodman's fixing to punch out the head of the school in front of everybody with no point. He has no problem doing that. That's great. I mean, and like you said, the other Tri-Lambs showing up, including UN Jefferson, and it's the 80s staple of bigger people and bullies immediately cower down. Like they don't even bow up. They're just like staring at each other. But at that point, when people their own size or bigger show up, you immediately see them as cowards.
While I was rewatching this last night, Noah said to me, he said, "Dad, isn't there a deleted scene where you find out Stan Gable is a nerd, and that's why we get the shot of his face 2 or 3 times there at the end?" And it triggered something in me that I said, I don't think there is a deleted scene, and I didn't have time to look it up, I'll be honest. That's why I'm throwing it to you. But there is like a big internet rumor, right? Or maybe they addressed it in one of the terrible sequels or something, that Stan really was like a straight A student nerd. And that's why we get those shots of him looking sad at the end. None of the other Alpha Betas care. They're just like, look at all these nerds walking up and joining the other nerds. But Stan has like this sad look on his face, like, I'm one of them and I'm too scared to admit it.
Well, that, and he just Noah's right. And you're right. They addressed the Stan as a nerd in one of the later horrible sequels that I may have seen one time, where you find out he's really a geek and he's been hiding it. And maybe in one of the earlier drafts, like script drafts of this movie, they had him being a nerd. But the only deleted scene that is out there from this movie involves at the very beginning of it, when they're at the Beta House and they're partying, he gets a phone call, and I'll insert it right here. He gets a phone call from somebody who's dressed as a nerd, pocket protector and everything. And he's like, "Hey, Stan, you owe me money." And he's like, "I told you never to call me here." And he goes, "I want my money." And the theory behind all that, Blake, is that is Stan's brother, who is a geek and actually bullies Stan. And Stan doesn't want anybody that he's friends with to know his brother's a geek. And you bring up a good point. At the end of the movie, everybody except Stan, they cut over to some of the better visuals from him as he just looks like he's about to cry. And you're wondering at the time you're watching this movie, is he having thoughts about, I wish I hadn't done all this. Maybe I wouldn't have lost my girlfriend. But you're absolutely right. A college quarterback in the 80s, he's going to get in whatever girl he wants. So it has to be something deeper, like, why am I pretending to be something that I'm not?
Well, then we went into the discussion about Stan Gable is probably one of the least guilty jocks that there is in this movie, right? I mean, he does have some moments where, he kind of leads the storm there at the end to trash their house. But, I mean, you know what? No, he's a piece of
Yeah, I want to get into one of my bigger points that I had. I want to get into it right now. Because you know how we do from time to time. We start off good with a review and then we miss out on some stuff. The reason I like this movie so much, it's hilarious. It makes you root for the underdog. And at the end, especially the very end of the movie, the closing scenes that lead to the big finale, it's like some scary stuff because they lose at the carnival, the homecoming carnival. The Tri-Lambs, and we'll talk about this in a minute, the Tri-Lambs win control of the Greek Council. John Goodman, in one of the better scenes of the movie, dresses down the entire football team.
Nerds!
And they storm out of the locker room towards the Tri-Lambs house, not knowing if they're there or not. Storm in there and trash their house. Now, there's another deleted scene where things get like real, where the Tri-Lambs show up while the Alpha Betas are destroying their house. And Stan grabs the trophy away from Gilbert because Gilbert's like, "I'm the president now." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, Mr. President." And he beats out of the house with the trophy. And then they tell him, "This is the way it's going to be." And they walk back in the house to finish trashing it. Now, luckily, I think them getting rid of that scene, doing it the way they did it, where the nerds just show up and say their house is trash, I think that's better. But it adds to the point that I want to make right now because it gets a real human, scary element to it, where these guys are so bothered by how different these nerds are that they're willing to go to whatever they need to do to get rid of these guys. They're willing to do it. And at the end of it, you get Gilbert walking up at the pep rally, and they just pick this guy up. They throw it.
Well, Lewis has a good line. I ain't trying to interrupt you, Ronnie. Lewis has a good line during all that. Gilbert says, "Lewis, it's okay. We got control of the Greek Council." He says, "Big deal. You'll be dead by then, Gilbert."
Yeah. And I think that's a throwaway line that people need to pay attention to because there's no doubt in my mind that this, even though this is a silly, raunchy comedy, that the mentality of these Alpha Betas, they would have no problem hurting or killing one of these Tri-Lambs to prove their point. They throw a brick through their fraternity house right after it gets built. They pull a KKK situation and burn nerds on their front lawn. They throw pigs in the house and standing out there on the side of the street and moon them. The reality of the harshness or the brutality of the bullying towards the end of this movie, I think adds some reality back to what is really just a fun comedy. But there are definite serious elements to this. And you can even see that out of the coach when he's supposed to beat up Anthony Edwards. I mean, you don't mess with my microphone. You're beneath me. I mean, it's like they took social status as like nerds and jocks, and it's more of like a racism movie, if anything, where it's one race looking down at the other race, if you want to really dig deep into this movie. So I mean, I thought that added some realness to this movie that I don't think everybody looks at. They just look at the gags throughout the movie, and they ignore the reality of the whole situation. Whereas the alpha betas are dangerous. I mean, and Gilbert's right. I mean, excuse me, Lewis is right. You'll be dead by then, Gilbert. They don't care about this crap. They want the status quo to stay the status quo.
My next good is going to be the characters. Very few movies can introduce me to so many characters without wasting a ton of time on it. So with the Tri-Lambs, I got Lewis, I got Gilbert, I got Wormser, I got Lamar,
Luttrell.
I got Booger, and
Dawson. Dudley.
Call me Booger.
All right. Booger.
I got Poindexter. And I feel like I know all of them. You probably get the least amount of knowledge about Poindexter, I would say. And really, maybe Booger. I know Booger has more lines, but you don't find out a lot about them. Like, Lamar is, a gay black kid. Wormser is a super genius. We know Lewis and Gilbert. We don't really know much about Poindexter, except that he's really into, music.
And can't sing.
And he's blind. And Booger, all we know is guy digs in his nose. Ohio. Maybe he's from Ohio.
I thought I was looking at my mother's old douchebag, but that's in Ohio.
And he can play guitar. Like, we know that.
He's coming to high schools all day.
He goes to the high schools looking for dates. And they didn't spend a lot of time introducing me to these characters. So, like, the fact that they were able to do that and help me relate to them that quickly without messing up the flow of the story, I thought was really well done. And on the other side of that coin is Stan Gable, is Betty Childs, is Ogre. Part of me wishes I would have got to known a couple of more of the alpha betas, but maybe I didn't need that. Maybe what they did was perfect.
It is.
We only need a couple of antagonists to really know them and their story and what they're all about. But Dean Ulick, the coach, I just thought they were able to throw a lot of characters at us in a little time, and here they are. Let's go,
They get a rock. The Tri-Lambs get a rock thrown through their fraternity window. I mean, their house window, the day one. So they go to the police. The police tells them, you got to go to the Greek Council. The Greek Council is all the fraternities of the college, and apparently they're over all the wrongdoings or whatever that goes on. The problem is the nerds aren't part of any kind of fraternity. It's hilarious to see them go, I guess we'll see you back here in 20 years. So they send out pictures and letters to all the fraternities hoping to get in. And the only one they didn't send a picture to is the only one to contact them back. And it's an all black fraternity, the Tri-Lambs, the Lambdas. And they meet with UN Jefferson, and you get the gag of, hey, this is an all black fraternity. And because they're so smart, he's in the process of telling them, there's no way you're getting into this fraternity. You're all nerds.
According to your bylaws, you have to take us on a 60-day trial basis.
I beg your pardon?
Poindexter is reading their guide, their charter, and he says,
it says here in your handbook, you have to get us a 30-day trial basis.
A 60-day trial basis. And UN Jefferson's like, what? And his partner there, that's one of the highlights of the movie, he's right, UN. Everybody gets accepted for 60 days. And he looks at it and goes, all right, then. Congratulations. He immediately changes. And they're like, we'll have the highest grade point average of any of your chapters, and we'll be open to all races. And, of course, Lamar goes, sexual orientations. And the best line, wonderful.
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 But the reason I'm bringing all this up is that we're going to have a party. So immediately they go ask the pies if they want to be their dates for the party, and they slam the door in their face. And then one of the chicks that Gilbert has met says her fraternity, and Booger's like, those are a bunch of pigs. So you get the whole scene of them showing up.
The Moose.
And UN Jefferson standing there over them as they're playing music, and it's just geeks looking at each other, and it's the most boring, awful, awkward thing ever.
It holds up. There's nothing wrong with that scene, America. Get over it.
Why can't the Tri-Lambs do back to them what's getting done to, I mean, you got to fight fire with fire. It's the 80s. I mean, guess what? 2020, you still got to fight fires with fire. I mean, it's the way it works.
Unless you're a fireman.
Yeah, then you got to fight fire with water. Good point. James Cromwell is in this movie. He later went on to make a bunch of good movies as a serious actor, but in this movie, he's responsible for being Lewis's dad. Classic line of, I've got the cruise control set at 35.
I've got the old cruise control set at 35.
While everybody's storming past him on the highway. And he invented the nerd laugh on the set, and they went with it. So it was James Cromwell that invented the, I can't do it. I don't have the lung capacity.
I can't do it either.
Whatever that is. He invented that. So we got him to thank for Babe the movie and for the nerd laugh from Revenge of the Nerds.
Okay. He's also the warden in the Adam Sandler Longest Yard movie.
Yeah, and he's the president in Sum of All Fears with Ben Affleck and the Russians. The whole carnival, the homecoming carnival, every event is great. And the fact that they would let these events take place on a college campus, like everybody's openly drinking. That's the reason I say this campus it's like Bourbon Street. Ogre spends the entirety of the movie drinking out of a trophy, alcohol. So the first event is a tricycle race where at the end of every lap, you have to chug a beer. And John Goodman's saying this next to the dean.
So in the events, they ride the bull because Ogre's on the bull holding the trophy and they can't get him off. Poindexter is riding the bull and they throw him immediately
into the atmosphere.
You got arm wrestling, which is a great scene where Booger gets a W by digging in his nose and then slamming a chick. And Ogre struggles with one of the big moves. You mentioned the bicycle race.
What's your favorite one? What's your favorite? I want to interrupt you. What's your favorite of all of them?
Well, so my favorite's going to be the bicycle race, but a close second has got to be the javelin throw. Right?
I was going to say that's my favorite
because you get the college quarterback Stan Gable just launching this thing into the atmosphere. And then here comes Gay Lamar with his limp wrist.
And Gilbert explains to the whole audience, Wormser's a master of aerodynamics. He has built this javelin specifically with Lamar's limp-wristed throwing motion in mind. He throws at 800 feet and then bows to everybody. Like the cut scene to the betas just looking.
The burp contest.
That one's great too.
Booger beats Ogre, and that's fantastic. Are we missing any?
The pies, where they got to sell a pie for charity.
Yeah, eat a pie for charity. That's good because the Alpha Betas are doing a kissing booth. It's just raising money.
Yeah,
the Alpha Betas are doing a kissing booth, and the Tri-Lambs have got naked pictures of Betty and put them on plates, and they just put whipped cream on it, and they sold $30,000 worth of pies. Ogre, go get one of these pies. Find out what the hell's going on.
Fantastic. Over 1,300. The nerds are over 2,000.
$1,258. Better than last year.
The nerds are over 2,000. Yep.
Selling pies? Yeah. Let's go check out these pies.
Why the hell are they selling so many? This is why. That's my pie.
That's my pie.
And you were right. The end of it. I mean, I didn't understand the scoring system here. I think we could spend a whole episode on the scoring system. I would assume it's 10 points for every win and 5 points for every second place. But the scoring system, even when they cut to the scoreboard, even after the nerds win some of these, the Alpha Betas still have more than what they do. And they really win the competition by winning the raising money for charity and then the talent show at the end where you get all the cheerleaders dressed like football players and all the football players dressed like cheerleaders. And then the nerds do their own little synthesizer rap / Elvis. The whole thing is great, and they win. And then that leads to the end of it when they trash the nerds' house, and we're at the pep rally for the finale.
Gilbert decides he's had enough, and he walks toward the pep rally. And you mentioned it earlier. He grabs the mic out of John Goodman's hand. He's like, "Hold on, son. What are you doing?" When Dean says, "Let go of him," he's like, "I will do." He goes, "I won't." He goes, "I'm gonna knock us down." He's like, "You'll do nothing of the sort." Says who? And he goes, "Says me, you ass." Pushes him hard. Coach grabs him, and he's got that thing cocked. When you hear, "Hold it, coach," you hold it right there.
You just hold it right there.
And then this badass beat just drops down, dun, dun, dun. And then you get these big ass black buff dudes who Ronnie aren't on the college football team.
No, they're from another campus.
Is that what it is?
What there's no Tri-Lambs on the campus of Adams College. That's the reason the nerds got that. These are guys from a whole nother damn campus, whole nother college.
You can edit that out. They show up and they eye down these alpha betas, and even Ogre has kind of a scared look in his face. UN grabs the mic and goes, "Son, say what you want to say." And Gilbert kind of blows it. He just says, "I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd, and I'm proud of it." And luckily, Lewis is there to come up and gives a really, really good speech about. I know there's some of you out there that's been picked on, put down. It's a good speech. I can't do it justice.
Yeah, he talks about how everybody in the crowd, they may have been called a nerd or a geek or a dork, and we're just here to let you know that it's okay to be who you are, and there's a lot more of us than there are of them. So come on out here now, and ends up being the whole crowd comes out, and there's some great shots of some dweebs out there in that crowd that they show, and then it ends with
none of the alpha betas move either, and I thought that was brilliant. I thought
It's one thing you say about the alpha betas. They are who they say they are, and they're not entertaining any of that at all. Even if Stan wants to be up there and be sad about it, he still stood right there the whole time and never budged to go down there.
There's little things I noticed too, Ronnie. You probably already caught this. When Betty runs out to Lewis, if you look in the background, Burke leans over and looks at Stan's like, "What the hell, man? What the hell?"
Grabbing it.
Yeah. I thought that was a great touch. And then you got the entire campus saying nerds, 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 and they're all chanting. It's great in two ways. I can't think of the other way. I just went blank, but Lewis and Gilbert have finally accepted who they are.
Yes.
Because Lewis was in denial the whole time. Gilbert, from the start of the movie, Gilbert's nervous about this because how are we going to be treated? Is it going to be like high school? And he's like, "Man, forget high school. This is college, The nerds finally accept who they are. And honestly, everyone else does too. And they're like, they're not that different from us. I mean, hell, they're cool. They're funny. They party.
The guys are on campus maybe 20 minutes. They get 20 minutes of happiness before the alpha betas are calling them nerds. And like you said, Gilbert is the realist. He knows he's a geek and a nerd. He doesn't fit in. And Lewis he's like doesn't want to admit that he's a nerd. He's like, "Oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be a great year." And why didn't the dad pull them closer to where they were going to get out at the freshman dorm? Why did he make them have to take that damn chest all the way across the campus?
It's a great question. I don't know.
That might be the only bad I have for the movie. Who's back there? Tim?
Robbie Knievel's fixing to make that jump, Ronnie, over Caesars. And I don't know.
So do you have any bads for this movie? Because I don't.
I don't. This movie's perfect.
I think so too. And now to finish it up, who is your ugly?
I went back and forth on this one, Ronnie.
Are you going to go with any of those black guys standing there in that? Because there's some ugly guys standing there from the Tri-Lambs.
There's one who I always said was the black ogre.
Yeah.
But no, I'm going strictly female, which I want to do like There's one nerd in a scene where they're cleaning the house, and I think they're painting. He gets dumped all over his head, and you really don't know who that is. That dude is very ugly. But I went back and forth on this one, Ronnie. It was either going to be the fat that answers the door for Wormser,
God.
but hey there, big boy.
And not to mention he's 10 and
He's
she's
10.
talking.
But I got to go with the fat from the panty raid scene who is mad that they're in there.
I'm going with the redheaded chick, Poindexter.
Yeah, she's gross.
Well, that's it, Blake. But one of my favorite movies of all time, and I think it's more than just a raunchy teen comedy. I think it's a complete movie with a complete story that you don't get out of movies today. It was magical because when you come back with part 2, it's a huge disappointment because they always follow up a great movie with a disappointing sequel because they think we need to do this and this to make it better instead of just understanding that this was lightning in a bottle. This was great. Everything worked and you didn't need to change anything. So all the characters are great. The story's great. The director's great. The writing, the music. I can't find anything wrong with this movie. I'm not going to apologize for this movie. This movie is amazing, Blake.
Perfect. I hope it never changes. Ronnie, I know you disagree. I've said it for years that I wish this movie would get the Cobra Kai treatment. I wish they would make a movie about the alpha betas. I think it could be successful. I think it could be funny. I think it could make fun of the Me Too stuff and the woke stuff by bringing back Panty Raid and lots of drinking. And I think you could have some real fun with it. Yeah, I said it at the top of the show that this is the greatest underdog movie that doesn't involve sports. You know what? I'm going to say a bad. There's not enough players on that college football team, Ronnie, when they're out there in practice.
No, definitely not enough players. You got to have at least 70 or 80, and they didn't have that.
Do you know karate?
You know karate? No. Good.
He put his jock over his head. Oh,
and that's another good that the nerds don't take. When they do something to them, they retaliate right back.
They put liquid heat in their jocks. And you get to see that evolution of UN Jefferson after that party when he sees all that hatred aimed at these nerds. And I think it kind of resonates with him.
That's right.
I've seen this kind of hatred.
We've experienced this.
Aimed at me for the exact same reasons, being different. Yeah. So I think that is, and then he gets the call about, we put liquid heat in their jogs, and I'm glad you nerds finally fought back. You'd be a great addition to Lambda, Lambda, Lambda. So everybody does, every character with the exception of the betas evolve throughout this movie and have an arc, and that's what's great about this. Hit us in the comments. What are your thoughts on Revenge of the Nerds? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Give us your good, bad, and ugly. And anything else, Blake?
That's it, man.
All right. See you later, buddy.
Love you.